Hello, this is Judy, and for the next hour, I will be reading from the June 22nd, 2026 issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. I will do my best to pronounce all names and words correctly, yet please forgive me if I do not. And here's our first article, and it's under Federal Politics, and the title is Carney Government Considering High-Speed Rail Stop in Kingston. Ottawa is opting to pursue a southern route that bypasses the Highway 7 corridor, the Star has learned. And this article is written by Ryan Tumilty, Tumilty, of the Ottawa Bureau. The federal government will consider adding a stop in Kingston, Ontario, to the Aalto High-Speed Rail project, opting to pursue a southern route that bypasses the Highway 7 corridor, the Star has learned. Transport Minister Stephen McKinnon will be in Kingston on Monday morning when he will make the announcement and release the government's consultation report that summarizes thousands of comments Aalto received this spring in town halls and online forums and through the project's website. In a statement, McKinnon said, and that's McKinnon, said those comments made it clear there is a demand for a stop in the city. Today's report reflects the voices of Canadians and communities across the corridor. I have directed Aalto to develop a southern route option that includes a potential stop in Kingston, subject to technical feasibility and project requirements, he said. This is an important next step towards building a faster, cleaner, and more connected rail network for Canadians. The project is designed to have trains running at 300 kilometers per hour or more between Toronto and Quebec City, with stops in Peterborough, Ottawa, Montreal, Laval, and Trois-Rivières. If the government gives a green light in 2029, when the project's engineering and design work is set to be done, it's estimated to take 12 years to construct and cost between $60 billion and $90 billion. During consultations this spring, Aalto displayed an east-west corridor 10 kilometers wide where the network could go, even though the final alignment would only require a 60-meter right-of-way. Two alignments were proposed after trains leave Peterborough heading east. One route went north, closely following the Highway 7 corridor, while the second went south, bringing trains closer to communities like Belleville and Kingston. And there's a picture of Aalto's corridor, and it just shows the different things leaving Toronto and Peterborough. And then the map goes to Ottawa, and then Laval, Montreal, and Trois-Rivières to Quebec City. In its report on the consultations, Aalto said many of the people believe leaving Kingston off the route was a mistake. Feedback consistently highlighted Kingston as a strategic location between Peterborough and Ottawa, emphasizing the role the city provides in connecting to Toronto and Montreal, reads the report. Participants emphasized that the southern corridor, specifically through Kingston and Belleville, with a station in Kingston, could serve a larger population than the northern route. Earlier this year, Kingston Mayor Brian Patterson told the Star that not including his city on the route would be wrong. If you don't, then you're basically shutting out not just Kingston, but really all the population centers along the Highway 401 corridor of eastern Ontario, he said. The distance between Peterborough and Ottawa is more than twice the distance of any of the other distances between other stops. The lack of a Kingston stop was not the only problem identified in the consultations, with significant concern from rural communities that they would have to sacrifice land for a rail line they would never use. Farmland protection and the preservation of agricultural connectivity were raised as concerns on many occasions, as were considerations about impacts on environment, wildlife, and natural habitats, reads a consultation report. The report also found a split in people's views depending on where they live. While urban participants in station cities often shared positive feedback about the travel efficiency and economic development benefits of high-speed rail, rural participants often expressed concern about the potential impacts of the project, the report says. An online survey on the project received 24,000 responses and found that 48.4% of people were very much in favor, while 10.4% were somewhat in favor. On the other side, 35% of people were not at all in favor of the project, and 5.3% were somewhat not in favor. The project has been met with opposition from a grassroots group called Alt No, which argues the project is too expensive, is being rushed, and offers little benefit to rural communities. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has also come out in opposition to the project, promising to cancel it if he becomes prime minister. Alto is now set to offer a more refined alignment for the project, with a new map set to be released this fall for the segment between Montreal and Ottawa, which has already been announced as the first part to be constructed. According to the report, the new map will include a 1 kilometer wide corridor for that central segment, with more consultation to follow. Narrower corridors for the rest of the line will follow in short order and are expected to be released no later than early 2027. Toronto residents who were part of the consultation suggested Union Station, Exhibition Station, and the East Harbor Transit Hub, currently under construction, as potential locations for the line's main Toronto station. And Ryan Tumulty is an Ottawa-based reporter covering Parliament Hill. You can reach him at his email, which is rtumilty@THESTAR.ca. Our next article is under the GTA, and the title is TDSB Budget Cuts, 5 Things Vanishing from Toronto Classrooms this Fall. The changes affect outdoor education sites, science-related resources for teachers and cafeterias, among other things. We take a closer look. And this article is written by Isabel Teotonio, and that's Teotonio, who is an education reporter, and Kristen Rushowy, and that's Rushowy, who is a senior writer. As the school year winds down, students are saying goodbye to more than just their classmates. The provincial supervisor in charge of the Toronto District School Board is poised to cut a number of programs and staff and working to eliminate a $25 million deficit, though the board is still not expected to balance the books this year. The changes affect outdoor education sites, science-related resources for teachers, the board's museum and archives, some school cafeterias, as well as community workers who help families, among others. We took a closer look at some of what's being lost in the city's public schools. Outdoor education. When outdoor education specialist Rich Scott heard of the budget cuts closing 5 outdoor ed sites, he was in the forest with students from the Jane Finch area planting white trilliums, Ontario's official flower. This kid looked at me in the face and said, "Rich, I can't wait to come back." And I said, "Sorry, kiddo, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to come back here and see your trillium grow." The board will close Toronto Urban Studies Center and Warren Park, end leases at Forest Valley and Etobicoke sites, and discontinuing programming at Island Natural Science School. Only Mono Cliffs and Hillside will remain open. This follows last year's closure of the Scarborough Outdoor Education School and Sheldon Center for Outdoor Education. Scott said outdoor education has faced death by 1,000 cuts, but this latest sweep eliminates hubs that have served countless youth on day trips and overnight excursions, which is troubling because kids are increasingly disconnected from their natural world. We're in the middle of a mental health crisis, and everyone is preaching the benefits of being outdoors, said Scott, who spent nearly 30 years at Forest Valley. Not every kid in Toronto has a cottage in Muskogee. Education Minister Paul Calandra, Calandra, recently defended the cuts to reporters, saying the province has to prioritize direct classroom funding over millions required to maintain old and outdated infrastructure. The board chose to protect the existing outdoor education centers that meet current needs while pouring money back into the classroom. Museum and Archives. The board's extensive century-old museum and archival collection is shutting down. But professors and researchers across the country say the artwork, historical documents, and artifacts have immense cultural significance and enduring historical value, and have written asking that while they understand your mandate and we appreciate the dilemma the board now faces, they want assurances the materials will be properly retained. While the board's collection of Group of Seven and other paintings donated over the years, most now in the care of the Art Gallery of Ontario, may be best known, the historical collection is less well known but is equally important, they wrote. The historical collection consists of hundreds of meters of material containing thousands of unique archival documents. It has been and continues to be of incalculable importance to the researchers and authors who are dedicated to understanding the past and telling those stories to the public. Adds a letter from Canadian Historical Association President and York University Professor Colin Coates, Coates, York Professor and researcher Paul Axelrod, Axelrod, UBC Professor and author Jason Ellis, among others. They're urging that the collection be transferred to the Archives of Ontario and are offering to help rapidly assess the collection and decide what should be retained for transfer. The board is working to digitize historical documents and developing a multi-year plan to review all items in the collection to determine next steps and how best to share those with the broader system, said Ryan Bird, the board's executive officer, communications and public affairs. For Coates, the collection is more important, and as a parent, he used the archives for the 50th anniversary of his children's elementary school and even borrowed some items. At the same time that a lot of people and politicians at all levels are saying history is important, they are taking away the ability to conduct research and to maintain the records of the past. Ellis said digitizing is not the same as preserving historical records, adding there may also be confidential documents as well as information that has civic importance or value. They hold property tax records, that sort of thing as well. They may hold deeds to the school properties. You can't just throw that away. Science resources. The public board is ending its centrally run Science Kit lending program, prompting concern among some teachers, especially as the province is putting a heavy focus on the sciences. The Science and Technology Resource Center, which is closing, has lent elementary teachers curriculum online kits, big bins packed with hands-on materials, resources, and activities. For instance, a grade 4 rocks and minerals kit includes specimens, fossils, and tools, such as magnifying glasses, tweezers, and streak plates. A kit about nature includes bug viewers, handheld microscopes, binoculars, seeds, and soil. The board's website says the center supports equitable access to learning. This past year, it loaned kits to more than 4,000 classes and has garnered high ratings from teachers. But now the existing inventory will be redistributed to the schools. One teacher, who is not authorized to speak publicly, called the loan program invaluable, saying kits are filled with items she doesn't normally have in the classroom. She fears many schools will miss this learning opportunity because there simply isn't enough inventory to go around, and she worries that schools with money will be able to buy science materials, while those with less will miss out. From fossils to microscopes to soils and coding bots, these science kits were an amazing way to ensure that students in every school could access the materials needed to learn science in a fun and practical way, she said. The kids love it. Community workers. When Lawrence Dawkins took on the role of community engagement worker for schools in some of Toronto's lowest income areas, he was blown away. I was shocked at how much food insecurity was there, he said. I'm shocked just to see some of the significant issues that parents face: housing, clothing, parents afraid of their kids. That's why Dawkins, who helps parents navigate everything from local food banks and housing applications to youth mental health crises, believes it is a huge mistake to dismantle the board's Model Schools for Inner Cities program. The award-winning, internationally recognized program provides extra staffing, funding, and resources to 150 elementary schools in high-needs neighborhoods. But this fall, staffing will be based on enrollment, class size, requirements, and union agreements, and all 28 parent and caregiver community engagement workers in model schools will be gone. They act as a bridge between vulnerable families, the school, and the broader community, helping parents access reading and math resources and become more engaged in their child's academic achievement. At a recent board budget meeting that drew protesters, parents pressed senior staff about the changes. They said they are modernizing supports with a more targeted approach based on student learning needs and outcomes. While officials said financial support for model schools, such as for field trips, will continue through a central equity fund, they offered few details. School cafeterias. Money-losing cafeterias are set to be shuttered at two middle schools, Cosborn and Valley Park, and at high schools Etobicoke School of the Arts, Forest Hill, Harbord, John Polini, and a shared one at Ursula Franklin Academy and Western Technical Commercial. My high-level concern is with the logic of cafeterias aren't profitable. Do we ask, are the firefighters profitable? It's a service our kids need. Parent Katrina Matheson told the Star, we're basically telling them they have to go off campus if they don't bring their lunch. However, Stephanie Harris, acting executive officer of finance, told a recent board budget meeting with the Parental Involvement Committee that decisions were data-driven based on financial results of operations in those schools. Students will still be able to gather in cafeteria spaces. In 2025, a board budget document indicated that while cafes were a source of funding for schools, they now account for a $900,000 loss across the system, and only about 30 will remain. Cafeterias province-wide were dealt a blow after the McGuinty Liberal government introduced new tradition standards in 2011, banning the sale of candy, energy drinks, and fried foods, and requiring items to be low in fat, sugar, and sodium. That saw kids head to nearby fast food joints instead. More recently, food delivery apps have hurt sales. With so many food options available to students, some cafeterias across the board have experienced declining numbers each year, making it difficult to remain financially viable, said Bird. As a result, retail services in some cafeterias will conclude at the end of this school year. It's important to note that school-based nutritional programming will continue, providing free food and snacks to students, he added. And Isabel Titonio, and that's Teotonio, is a Toronto-based reporter covering education for The Star. And Kirsten Rushowy, Rushowy, is a Toronto-based senior writer covering education for The Star. Our next article is titled, Expanded HST Rebate on New Ontario Homes Launches Monday After 3-Month Wait. Industry leaders lauded the decision to expand the HST rebate to all buyers, but frustration was mounting over the delay in enacting regulation. And this article is written by Clary Feinstein, Feinstein, who is a business reporter. Ontario's expanded HST rebate program will officially launch Monday, following a 3-month delay that was causing increasingly concerns among some leaders in the home building industry. The program, to be announced by the federal government, will build on a suite of measures designed to improve housing affordability by providing GST relief on first-time home buyers, as announced last year, a senior government official told The Star. While industry leaders lauded the decision to expand the HST rebate from first-time buyers to all buyers, frustration was mounting over the delay in the program's official launch. Bill C-26 received royal assent Thursday and provides more than $1.7 billion to provinces and territories to increase housing supply. The federal money is being given to provinces and territories to administer as they please, but Ontario wanted Ottawa to administer the rebate differently. The province asked the federal government to rebate its 5% portion of the 13% harmonized sales tax through the Canada Review Agency, which requires federal regulations to be enacted, leading to a 3-month delay, according to the official. The Star granted anonymity as the official could not speak publicly on the matter. The expanded program was first announced on March 25th, and the rebate came into effect for all new home purchases taking place on April 1st or later. But the delay in enacting the regulations meant that builders were operating in the dark. The lack of enabling regulation over the last 3 months of the program have resulted in an increasing number of questions on how exactly the rebate will be administered. Dave Wilkes, President and CEO of the Building Industry and Land Development Association, BILD, told The Star. He said some buyers were holding back on purchases until such time as the administrative mechanisms are in place. Sales of a new single-family homes have already responded well to the HST rebate, which many builders began offering as of April 1st. New build single-family home sales outperformed the 10-year average for a second consecutive month in May, BILD said in its Monday report. There were 830 single-family home sales in the GTA in May, a significant year-over-year increase, with sales 26% higher than the 10-year average. However, new condos accounted for 193 units sold in the GTA in May, 89% below the 10-year average. The HST rebate doesn't help solve the persistent headwinds facing the high-rise sector, as the program eligibility requirements have defined start and completion dates for new housing projects that are too tight for most new high-rise condominium projects to meet, which is likely also impacting sales, said Justin Sherwood, Chief Operating Officer at BILD. The new expanded HST rebate maxes out at $130,000 for homes costing between $1 million and $1.5 million. The rebate then gradually drops to $24,000 at the $1.85 million threshold. The $24,000 rebate has already been in effect for about 15 years. The rebate applies to both owner-occupied primary residences and residential rental properties, so long as purchase agreements are signed between April 1st, 2026 and March 31st, 2027. Construction for primary residences has to begin by December 31st, 2028, and must be substantially completed by December 31st, 2031. For rental units, the deadline for completion is 2 years earlier, December 31st, 2029, due to a glut of vacant residential properties languishing on the market. Housing investors are also eligible under the rebate, which will only revive investor demand as private funds are already bulk buying condos, warns the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, CCPA, in a report. A Montreal-based real estate company, Gesta Group, snapped up $30 million of unsold condo units in downtown Toronto with a plan to buy $500 million more worth over the next year. The firm's senior managing director said the HST rebate allowed them to do the transaction. And this article was written with files from Robert Benzie, and Clary Feinstein is a Toronto-based business reporter for The Star. You can reach Clary via email, which is ClarrieFeinstein at symbol TORSTAR.ca. Here is an article under federal politics, and the title is Canada, Australia formalized deal for Arctic over the horizon radar system. And this article is written by the Canadian Press. Canada and Australia have agreed on terms to allow Ottawa to buy components of the Arctic over the horizon radar system from BAE Systems Australia. Stephen Fuhr, FUHR, Canada's Secretary of State for Defence Procurement, was in Canberra on Sunday to make the announcement with Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles. Canada has committed to spend more than $6 billion developing the new radar system in the far north, which is set to begin operation in December 2029. The radar system will give Canada the ability to detect threats in the air and on the ocean and provide early warning trafficking throughout the north. BAE Systems is one of the companies that built an over-the-horizon radar system in Australia. Fuhr's office said BAE Systems will work with Canadian companies to develop the Canadian system. Work on the new capability is set to begin on July 1st. Fuhr's office said, calling the agreement the beginning of the delivery phase for the radar project. The Canadian government is committed to spending $2.5 billion on the capability through this deal with Australia. The radar system will be located in southern Ontario at 2 transmission sites and 2 receiving sites. The Department of National Defence bought land near Barrie and Kawartha Lakes for the initial sites, which sparked controversy and petitions from landowners in the area. In May, Defense Minister David McGuinty's office wrote in a response to questions from a member of Parliament that the location requirements for the project were inflexible and that the sites were chosen after assessing hundreds of options. Over the Horizon radar is expected to be fully operational in 2043. It is considered a key component of the NORAD modernization program announced in 2022, which is expected to cost $38.6 billion over 20 years. And this report by the Canadian Press was first published June 21st, 2026. And you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article is an opinion article about the World Cup, and the title is What to Watch This Week at the World Cup, Canada's Challenge, An American Trap, and the Real Rolando. And this article is written by Amy Walsh, who is a contributing columnist. Amy Walsh is a Canadian Soccer Hall of Famer, broadcast soccer analyst, and co-host of the Footy Prime podcast. She is a freelance contributing columnist to the Toronto Star. How are we doing, Canada? Our men's soccer team got its historic first World Cup win, the biggest ever for a CONCACAF nation. Jonathan David became the first Canadian to bag a World Cup hat trick. Sile Larin scored for a second consecutive match. We're atop Group B, and the world is sitting up and taking notice. Within our borders, our valiant supporters group, the Voyagers, is mobilizing fans, new and old alike, to come together in support. Toronto Stadium and BC Place have been unequivocally read outs with spectators in full voice. Watch parties are hot tickets if you can't get in the stadium. Most of us can't. Coach Jesse Marsch, and that's Marsch, human meme factory and motivator extraordinaire, has sliced and diced his way via passionate sideline theatrics and remonstrations directly into Canadian hearts. What's on the menu for his pregame meal? Whatever it is, put it in my veins. But there was a somber note after Ismail Kone's, and that's Kones, gruesome broken leg. Kone, a dynamic and skillful midfielder, is one of Canada's brightest talents and a critical piece of the March system. What should have been a cathartic expression of unbridled joy in a 6-0 win over Qatar turned into a slightly muted affair. But it was a masterful response from the Canadians, who stayed disciplined, kept up the relentless attack, and overwhelmed the Qataris. Pedal to the metal, goal after goal, the Kone tribute by his Quibocious mate Nathan Saliba, and that's Saliba, remember that name. Back to that joy. The celebratory atmosphere at BC Place will continue, and across the country, even more eyeballs will be trained to Wednesday's match against Switzerland, where the Canadians can secure a place in the knockouts and perhaps even top the group, prolonging their stay in Vancouver. Let that all sink in. Here are 5 things I'm watching this week. U.S. versus Turkey. The Americans are in scintillating form. They have won back-to-back matches at the World Cup for the first time in 96 years, and they have done so in a convincing fashion. They will finish atop Group A, and their game against already eliminated Turkey on Thursday is a chance to use a classic turn of phrase, dead rubber, a match without consequence. But there is a potential wrinkle. Will rest, rotations, and managerial tinkering disrupt their rhythm and kill momentum as they look ahead to the knockouts? Canada versus Switzerland. This is the biggie, folks. The pragmatic and tournament-tested Swiss will be the toughest opponent for Canada. While the hosts hold an advantage in goal differential after routing Qatar, Switzerland typically delivers when it counts. They've reached the knockout stage in 4 of their last 5 World Cups, and they are coming off a divisive 4-1 victory over Bosnia-Herzegovina. Canada needs to be on the front foot and aggressive, but also understand that, unlike their previous 2 matches, the Swiss will want the ball and try to dictate tempo and terms. A draw or win could guarantee Canada stays atop the group and grants them another match at BC Place, in addition to a valuable 7-day rest. And what do the Fonzie watch? His return to full training rolls on, despite no fitness updates by Marsch and the team. My money's on Alphonso Davies getting a cameo of 15 to 20 minutes. Panama versus Croatia. The Panamanians descended upon Toronto last week and were left bitterly disappointed after Ghana stole all 3 points with a goal at the death. But their supporters still took to the streets with a joyful exuberance. On Tuesday, they'll be looking to bounce back against a very experienced and wily Croatia and its impressive GTA Diaspora, still reeling from a 4-2 loss to England. Schnezia versus Mexico. The World Cup accelerates and takes you completely by surprise. Thrilling and concurrent group action dictates the 32 teams that advance out of the group stage. It's a lot. Remember Qatar 2022, when the entire tournament was only 32 teams? But I digress. Mexico is another co-host with the most giving opponent fits and giving CONCACAF a good name. Javier Aguirre and his men have started the tournament brilliantly and will be looking to impress the home fans in Mexico City at the Story Estadio Azteca on Wednesday. Sorry, Guinea Mexico City Stadium doesn't have quite the same ring to it, but the altitude challenges remain daunting for Schnezia. Golden Boot Race Ronaldo Watch, sharing top billing with the likes of Lionel Messi, Kylian Mbappe, and that's Mbappe, and Erling Haaland, and that's Haaland, are two aforementioned Canadians, David and Laren. Didn't have that on my bingo card. Conspicuous by his absence is Cristiano Ronaldo. It's early doors, but his performance to open the tournament didn't cover him in glory. You can be sure that between sets of crunches, he was watching all of the highlights and will be raring to go versus Uzbekistan on Tuesday. In Group 1 on Monday, France versus Iraq and Norway versus Senegal will provide Mbappe and Haaland opportunities for another goal-scoring masterclass and one more upmanship in the Golden Boot race. Our next article is under business, and the title is May Food Inflation Outpace Overall Inflation as Fruits and Vegetables Get Pricier. Rising food prices continue to outpace headline inflation for the 16th straight month, Statistics Canada data showed, with no relief in sight for consumers as higher gas prices weigh on grocery bills. And this article is written by Ritika Dubey, D-U-B-E-Y, of the Canadian Press. Rising food prices continue to outpace headline inflation for the 16th straight month, Statistics Canada data showed, with no relief in sight for consumers as higher gas prices weigh on grocery bills. Food inflation in May was up 0.5 percentage point to 4.3% annually, pushed higher by expensive fruits and vegetables, the agency said on Monday. Overall inflation came in at 3.2% annually last month. Consumers paid more for broccoli, tomatoes, cauliflower, and lettuce at the grocery store checkout, as prices for fresh vegetables were up 9% compared with May 2025. Tomato prices jumped 45.2% amid poor weather in Mexico and a drop in planted acreage as the U.S. imposed tariffs on the fruit, the agency said. Tomatoes have been in a perfect storm, said Michael Van Massow, and that's M-A-S-S-O-W, food economist at the University of Guelph. He said it highlights the issues with resilience in the country's food system, which relies on limited sources for imports, particularly in the winter months. StatCan said prices for fresh vegetables were up 5.5% month over month, the largest increase for May since 2008, after it fell 3.9% in April. Meanwhile, berries and grapes drove fresh fruit prices higher by 5.3% from a year ago. RBC Analysis Irene Nattel, Nattel, said in a note that while fuel prices are off their recent highs, diesel prices remain a notable headwind, which is up more than 22% year over year. Recent weaknesses in the Canadian dollar is also affecting grocery imports. Von Massow said transportation represents about 10 to 15% of retail fruit and vegetable prices on average because of long travel distances and shorter shelf life. Fresh produce prices are pushed higher as gas prices remained elevated amid the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, which effectively blocked the Strait of Hormuz, a critical waterway for oil tankers, and disrupted a fifth of global energy supply. Transportation costs are driving that broader increase across the board in the category, and there's some variation depending on how far it comes and what kind of year they've had in yields, Von Massow said. StatCan said gas prices rose 33.2% year over year last month. The agency said last month marks the most consumers have paid for gasoline since June of 2022, when Russia's invasion of Ukraine drove supply uncertainty. Bob also said some fresh produce prices could ease as Canada heads into the growing season. Tomatoes, however, are unlikely to see a significant drop until late July or early August when the harvest season arrives, he said. You have to consider that demand for tomatoes goes up in the summer, he said. We're barbecuing more, we're making more fresh salads, and so demand for tomatoes goes up. That also increases the price. And this report by the Canadian Press was first published June 22nd, 2026. Our next article is under personal finance, and it is an opinion article. The title is, This is Your Biggest Enemy When It Comes to Building Wealth. And this article is written by Lesley Ann Skorgi, a contributing columnist, and Lesley Ann Skorgi is a Toronto-based personal finance columnist and a freelance contributing columnist for The Star. The biggest threat to your finances isn't overspending, it's financial overwhelm. Imagine sitting down to invest $10,000 you've worked so hard to save. Within 5 minutes, you've read that artificial intelligence, AI, will create the next generation of millionaires. A podcast host says buying Nvidia, and that's NVIDIA, 5 years ago changed his life. Your neighbor can't stop talking about Bitcoin. Someone on social media is panicking, and so is your dad, who's left you multiple WhatsApp messages because he thinks everyone is getting rich from the latest SpaceX IPO frenzy. Meanwhile, another headline warns the stock market is dangerously overvalued and a recession could be around the corner. So what do? Nothing. Welcome to financial paralysis. The modern economy doesn't just compete for your money, it competes for your attention. Every headline claims urgency. Every influencer has the next big idea. Every investment feels like it could either make your fortune or leave you hopelessly behind. The whole experience is designed to trigger urgency, fear, and the feeling that everyone else knows something you don't. The result? Many people freeze, delaying investing, avoiding financial decisions, and slowly, quietly falling further behind. Here's how to break the cycle and build financial security in a sustainable way. Create 3 to 4 non-negotiable money rules. Decision fatigue eases when you don't have to make as many decisions, allowing you to focus on the decisions that truly matter while taking comfort in the systems you built for everything else. In action, you create a few simple rules you can follow, then try to automate what you can. These could include guiding principles like, we make 95% of our food at home. I will invest every payday and before spending any money. Never carry a credit card balance or wait 48 hours before making any purchase over $250. Clear rules become your financial North Star, guiding your decisions through uncertainty while reducing emotional spending and decision fatigue. Put your investing on autopilot. You don't have to decide whether today is a perfect day to invest, nor should you try to time the market, which even the experts struggle to get right. By setting up automatic contributions every paycheck to your work retirement programs, RRSPs, TFSAs, FHSAs, and RESPs, time and consistency start working for you, rather than letting fleeing headlines and FOMO work against you. Warren Buffett, arguably one of the best investors of all time, has long preached patience and long-term investing over trying to perfectly time markets. Limit your financial noise. You don't need to be subscribed to 6 finance podcasts, 12 newsletters, and hourly market updates. Professional finance advice, along with reputable education resources and AI tools like ChatGPT, can absolutely improve your financial literacy as long as you don't share private, personal, or financial information. Choose 2 or 3 trusted sources with legit financial credentials and ignore the rest. Less information often leads to better decisions because you're focused on long-term strategy instead of daily drama. It also creates space for you to do proper financial planning with an advisor, planner, or qualified coach. Focus on the decisions that actually move the needle. People spend hours researching the highest paid savings account while ignoring career growth, investment fees, and housing costs, their financial habits, or whether they're investing at all. Ironically, the biggest drivers of wealth are rarely the smallest decisions. The biggest drivers of wealth are usually your income, savings rate, investment consistency, financial alignment with a partner, and major lifestyle decisions, not whether you squeezed a fractionally better rate on a small savings account. This idea is really about focusing on the bigger picture and aligning your efforts with network building activities and habits. Ask yourself what you could focus on that would drive better results long term. Remember that doing nothing is still a decision. Waiting for the perfect time to invest, buy a home, or start saving often feels responsible, but perfection is expensive. Progress almost always beats procrastination. The people who build wealth aren't necessarily the smartest investors. They're often the ones who made enough good decisions consistently and refused to let fear of missing out derail their plan. And in case you're reeling from all this SpaceX chatter, most people either didn't have access to IPO shares, didn't receive an allocation, or only heard about it after the frenzy had already begun. That's the funny thing about financial fear of missing out. It convinces you that everyone else got rich while you were left behind. They didn't. Your biggest financial advantage isn't chasing the next shiny object. It's building a simple, repeatable system that quietly moves you forward while everyone else is distracted by the noise. Our next article is a Star investigation, and the title is Toronto Councillor Under OPP Investigation Recuses Himself Off Decisions on More Scarborough Developments. As OPP Anti-Racket Squad investigates, Councillor Parthy Kandavel, and that's Parthikandavavel, has repeatedly denied wrongdoing. He says recusal made out of abundance of caution. And this article is written by Ben Spur, City Hall Bureau Chief, and Victoria Gibson, investigative reporter. A city councillor under investigation by the Ontario Provincial Police over his dealings with developers is recusing himself from decisions on more projects in his ward, saying he made the decision to avoid perceived conflicts of interest. At a Scarborough Community Council meeting on May 28th, Councillor Parthy Kandavel, the first-term representative for Scarborough Southwest, said he was recusing himself in light of the allegations against him and out of an abundance of caution. He announced he wouldn't take part in decisions about zoning bylaw approvals in his ward while I learn more about the investigation. He then abstained from debates on two developments before the committee. The broader recusal is a charge of reproach for Kandavel, who has previously told the Star he intended to avoid participating in decisions related to a single development at 708-712 Kennedy Road, based on advice from Toronto's Integrity Commissioner. As the Star previously reported, the police investigation appears to have been prompted by a complaint to the Integrity Commissioner made July 8, 2025, by a representative of the owners of the Kennedy Project, which the Commissioner's office passed to the police. How Kandavel's voting decisions unfolded. Little is known about the original complaint. Toronto's Integrity Commissioner, the police, and a lawyer for the owners of the Kennedy development had declined to provide details of the allegations. Kandavel, who has denied any wrongdoing, says he only learned the investigation was underway when, in early May, he was contacted by the OPP. The councillor confirmed the investigation via a statement on social media 2 days later. Kendavo then continued to participate in city business and decisions, including a vote to approve a rezoning application on Danforth Avenue in his ward during a city council meeting on May 20th. When asked about that vote by the Star last month, Kendavo said that he consulted the city integrity commissioner in advance of that meeting, who advised that he could still take part in development decisions except where the specific allegations against me create a conflict of interest. A spokesperson for Kendavo did not answer the Star's questions about the recusals, but referred reporters to the councilor's statement from the May 28th meeting. When Kendavo said it was a very difficult decision, as I know many in the community were looking for my leadership today. Opting out of local development decisions is unusual for councilors, who often take an active role in the approval process and give their constituents a voice on proposals in their area. After OPP stepped in, new allegations emerged. After receiving the complaint involving Kendavo last summer, the Integrity Commission referred it to the Toronto Police, who passed it on to the OPP to avoid any conflicts of interest. City councilors vote on the Toronto Police budget and sit on its oversight board. The commissioner is obliged to refer a complaint made to their office to the authorities if they determine there are reasonable grounds to believe the law has been broken. The investigation is being led by the OPP's Anti-Rackets Branch, which the provincial force says investigates corruption and large-scale fraud, among other alleged financial crimes. The anti-rackets team can also be tapped to support other police services with complex or sensitive investigations, the OPP says. As previously reported, the Star has learned that police investigators have reached out to individuals connected to at least 3 separate development projects. Since news of the investigation broke, 2 individuals connected to a pair of developments in Kendavo's ward, who requested anonymity out of concern for potential impacts on development projects, have separately told the Star that the councilor allegedly asked them to arrange 6-figure payments to third parties while the projects made their way through the approval process. The sources said they believed the requests were outside the city official community benefits regime, under which developers help fund facilities and services in neighborhoods near their projects. They both allege Kendavo made the request in private settings with no city officials or staff present. Kendavo, presented with those specific allegations, denied wrongdoing again. He said he has confidence in the police undertaking a thorough and fair investigation that will exonerate him. In his public statement on social media in early May, Kendavo said that he strived to maintain the highest standards of ethics and integrity and will address any allegations that suggest otherwise. The investigation is unfolding as City Hall ramps up toward a fall election. Kendavo, who was voted into office via a 2023 by-election, has said he plans to run again in October, but had yet to sign up as of Friday. And Ben Spur is the Star's City Hall Bureau Chief based in Toronto. You can reach him at his email, which is bspurr@thestar.ca. Victoria Gibson is a Toronto-based investigative reporter. You can reach her via her email, which is victoriagibson@thestar.ca. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the June 22nd, 2026 issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Judy, that's me, and has been such a pleasure and honor to read to all of you. I hope you take care of your amazing self and have a most wonderful day. Thank you so much for listening.